This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Ever notice your dog slowing down and having health issues and wonder, what can I do to make them better? Well, my friend, add Rough Greens to your dog's food for 90 days and I guarantee you'll see changes that will amaze you. Greetings. Naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black, inventor of Rough Greens here, and I invite you to give your pup the Rough Greens 90-day challenge. In the first 30 days, you'll see shinier coats and increased energy. By day 60, your dog will have a stronger immune system, less shedding, improved joint function, all due to the live nutrients that you've added to their diet. And at 90 days, better digestion, reduced inflammation, improved heart health, and you may even have reduced their cancer risk. Fetch your dog a free Jumpstart trial bag today. Go to roughgreens.com. Use promo code 90day. That's ruffgreens.com. Use promo code 90day. You just cover the shipping. You don't have to change your dog's food to improve your dog's health. Just add a scoop of Rough Greens.
You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. You know, the show is interesting in its independent in thought and nature. It has a original flair, an authentic flair, really. You know, when we think about life, we wonder about truth, and we wonder if we're getting the truth. But better yet, where is the truth coming? You know, we get inundated in news and fake news and stuff that's supposed to make us feel a certain way. And we begin to question why we're here. And is this real or is this false? Is this told to me to make me feel a certain way? And overall, I feel as though I don't have the facts. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Standing Rock. Just some buzzwords right now, some keywords that if you're looking up on Google, if you've been trying to find a story or trying to find out what's going on, we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about Mexico as well. We're going to be talking about the pipeline. We're going to be talking about the environment. We're going to be talking about North Dakota. We're going to be talking about West Texas. And joining me tonight on Live Your True Life Perspectives is a close friend and somebody that's been in the front lines at Standing Rock and knows a lot about what's going on from firsthand knowledge. Lou Rocha joins us here live on Perspectives. Lou, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ashley. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you in the studio. Glad to have you. So give us a little background because you have a really interesting background being from Spanish and Native American heritage. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about that?
My Spanish heritage, my family first came to the North America in 1622. They were Spanish naval officers who were given a land grant out in West Texas and southern New Mexico. And my Native American heritage comes from the same clan as Geronimo, Chiricahua Apache, and the Mescalero.
That's awesome. So let me ask you, you've been standing at Standing Rock, and I know that you spend a lot of time. Is that because of your Native American heritage? Is that because you're an environmentalist? Why is that?
All of the above. I would say definitely all of the above.
And what did you see there? Because I know that we've been watching the little bit of news that we have gotten from that. And I remember when you were there, I didn't see any news from there. But I know that there were some caveats. Weren't there some things that you found out immediately when you got there that you were kind of astonished by?
Yeah, I was first blown away when I first got there and got out of the car about the helicopter that was flying over our head nonstop. And
tell me about that helicopter.
Very interesting helicopter. Definitely no markings on the helicopter. There were two different ones. There was a yellow one and a white one, and it just zeroed over our heads 24/7. 3 o'clock in the morning, that helicopter was going around your head nonstop, going over the camp, going over the front lines, and going over the construction site for DAPL.
How was that? I mean, I'm assuming after a while, since you were there for so long, it became white noise. But in the beginning, wasn't that a little, kind of felt a little odd? I bet you could feel the planes flying over. You could
feel the plane. You could feel, which was in addition to that helicopter, just 24/7. It just really boggled the mind that they're able to do this. Out of curiosity, we called the air people, and we in Oklahoma City, and they told us that it's a no-fly zone. Nobody has any permits to be flying in that area, and nobody is flying in that area. Yet every day we're sitting there looking at this helicopter and this plane and drones flying over our heads 24/7.
So you have drones flying over, checking out to see everybody that's out there, basically doing visual 360, right? And then you have these planes flying over and these helicopters. So there was kind of an ominous feeling, I'm sure, but you were still able to create some sort of camaraderie. Tell me more about that.
The camaraderie out there was enormous. I mean, you had everybody from Norway, you had people from New York, you had people from Seattle, you had different tribes from all over the nation, a total of 300 different tribes represented. You had youth from different universities out there, every walk of life, standing hand in hand, different people from different religious groups and from different political ideologies there hand in hand. It wasn't just a liberal thing. It wasn't just a Democratic thing. It was also, there were Republicans there, there were veterans there, everybody hand in hand, and they're still there.
Well, I feel like the environmental aspect of this whole situation outweighs any sort of political constraints, and it's something that's very important to me. I might have certain feelings a certain way about certain laws and certain ideas, but when it comes to the environment, that's the one thing that we really have to be aware of what we're doing. Mm-hmm. Because we are a civilization that lives and breathes by the water that we drink and the food that we eat.
Correct.
And if we screw up our water system, what's going to happen to us?
Exactly. And to the Native Americans, their term Miniwachani, which means water is life, and that is just so vital to them. The taking care of the water and protecting the water is first and foremost. It's how, the rest of the food chain, all that is affected by the water. The people, your children, everything is affected by the water. And to protect that water is vital to them and their rights. And we're at a point where these pipelines are much bigger than they used to be. The volume capacity is much higher. They are claiming that they're a higher quality steel now and a higher quality weld, and that we don't have anything to worry about, but they're also pumping 10 times the pressure and 10 times the volume. And if one of these do fracture and break in one of these major waterways, you can really knock out an entire area affecting up to, if you're talking about North Dakota, 17 million people being knocked out and having no fresh water overnight. So,
oh my God. Yeah, this is not something to take lightly, and I think oftentimes people don't realize why people do what they do and what the reasoning behind it is. We start taking sides and we don't understand. But I think the basis is water and our environment and the people that live there. And there's been several pipeline problems, haven't they, in other pipelines around our country?
Correct. It's almost monthly. There's another pipeline break. Since this has started, we've had several. We've had 3 in North Dakota. We had one that just broke another month ago. I think that one spewed out several million gallons of oil into another little river. one of the reasons for these pipelines is the cost of the transportation of this on trucks or on trains, and the taxes that you have to pay per state when they're weighing these trucks as they go from state to state cuts into the profit margins of these big oil tycoons. And then there's already, people don't really know this part, there's already many pipelines that are running.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Ever notice your dog slowing down and having health issues and wonder, what can I do to make them better? Well, my friend, add rough greens to your dog's food for 90 days and I guarantee you'll see changes that will amaze you. Greetings, naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black, inventor of Rough Greens here, and I invite you to give your pup the Rough Greens 90-day challenge. In the first 30 days, you'll see shinier coats and increased energy. By day 60, your dog will have a stronger immune system, less shedding, improved joint function, all due to the live nutrients that you've added to their diet. And at 90 days, better digestion, reduced inflammation, improved heart health, and you may even have reduced their cancer risk. Fetch your dog a free Jumpstart trial bag today. Go to roughgreens.com, use promo code 90day. That's ruffgreens.com. Use promo code 90day. You just cover the shipping. You don't have to change your dog's food to improve your dog's health. Just add a scoop of Rough Greens.
Around these rivers and in other directions, going to the same spot that this pipeline's going. All over the country, there's thousands of pipelines that are already out there. But the mineral rights and the way they set up those pipelines to the people that own the land that these pipelines are going through, it's extremely expensive to the oil guy. It's going to take out his margins. And he doesn't want to pay the other oil pipeline companies. He doesn't want to pay the people who have the land mineral rights. He just wants to take the land for free. And he wants to circumvent and cut right past the government and not have to pay the taxes on it.
So basically, this comes down to the money.
It comes down to the money and the margins. Yep.
So it's all about the taxes. It's all about basically kind of getting around it and another way of getting around it to make more money.
Right.
And in the process, we are using land that one is in this situation is sacred land, right?
Yes.
So it's not just mineral rights in this situation. This is more of a sacred land. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, there's a lot of argument and debate there. There's a treaty, a federal treaty with the Lakota Indians, which are known by the Sioux, which they're not Sioux. Our federal government named them Sioux. They're actually Lakota. The Fort Laramie Treaty of 1851 covers that part and that portion of land that they're going through. They did reserve the right to be able to do easements, federal easements, but it couldn't be just a state easement. It has to be a federal easement that's crossing state borders, and they have that reserved that right in the treaty. But they're not following any of the protocols for that, and the tribe has the right to protest that or contest it and not allow it. But what they're doing is what happened all over the nation around 1860s. A lot of the Union soldier officers after the Civil War during the Reconstruction period were just kind of allowed to go out and take over. They literally took over, and what they did is their buddies, when they retired, became the sheriff, or they became the state marshal or U.S. marshal, and some stayed enlisted. And what they were able to do, land grabs. They were able to write up their own deeds, regardless of any other federal treaty that they were contradicting, and these deeds would be filed with the county, and they wouldn't surface, and the Native Americans wouldn't be aware of some of these deeds that encroached into their tribal lands until sometimes 80 years later. And when they would discover these deeds, at that point it was too late. You couldn't contest it, or they were powerless and couldn't afford the attorneys to contest it. And the farmer that had moved in was a nice couple with children and got along with the Native Americans and had no problems a lot of the times. And they got along great. And so they didn't choose to contest it. They let them live. But now it's coming to haunt them that they didn't contest it at that time or weren't able to contest it. And so what you have, the argument in North Dakota, is that because it's been occupied in some areas by independent landowners, that land was not theirs long ago and was taken from them, but nobody can explain how, and is in violation of the federal treaty, but the state won't recognize it. And the federal government won't come in and force the state to recognize it.
That's interesting how when you try to do what's right, you let people just live there, and now it's all coming back, huh?
Right.
So let's go back. You were talking about, and so a lot of us, I think, out there that have been looking and reading, there's a couple articles in the Atlantic. I think there was a little bit of coverage on the news. And when I mean a little bit of coverage on the news. And what we saw was kind of one-sided. You were talking about the drones and the planes that were kind of flying with no lights, and there was no sort of identification on it. Also, I remember you and I were talking, but funny enough, your cell phone wasn't working.
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about that, because it seems like nobody's cell phone was working the closer they were at Standing Rock.
Correct. It didn't matter how long you juiced it. You could have 100% juice on your cell phone. And if you walked about 50 yards to the line, you would watch your cell phone slowly, just your bars just go all the way down to zero, and your cell phone just shut off. You'll see it go black. There were cars, a lot of the cars now that have the internet technology, that have the little computer screens, they would turn on in the middle of the night with no key in it, without the owner nearby. The air conditioner would turn on, and you would hear it click and click off. They were constantly out searching and catching different, looking for laptops, trying to find cell phones. And every now and then they'd find the car, and you would see it. The lights would pop on and off, and they'd mess with the car, realize they're dealing with a car, and then they would go dark, and that would be it.
Wow, that's wild. So basically, it wasn't having to be arguing about, T-Mobile service or anything. There was nobody getting service out there.
There was nobody. I mean, we had a little hill called Facebook Hill, and on that hill, we had a booster and somebody who was kind enough to bring some big, powerful generator, and you had to go up to that thing, and you were lucky within 3 feet of it that you could get a little bit of cell service and be able to broadcast out.
Were y'all able to do any Facebook Live type stuff?
Occasionally, yes. Occasionally, you'd be able to get a live feed out, and people were able to do live feeds and shows, such as when we got attacked by the water canyons at 20 degree below weather.
When we return, we're going to be talking more about the attack by the water cannons, because that's something I want to talk about. I think some of us saw a little bit of that coverage, but let's talk more about that when Lou and I return. Stay tuned, because Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, be back this time. We'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on Perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Joining me this evening is Lou Rocha. It's a friend and also someone that knows exactly what he's talking about when he talks about Standing Rock, the pipeline, the environment, and the oil situation, and what's truly happening. Right before the break, Lou, you were telling me about, y'all had a mountain called Facebook Mountain, and how you could go
Facebook
up there.
Hill, yeah.
Facebook Hill. Facebook Hill. And how y'all could go up there and at least get a signal and be able to communicate with the outside world. Tell me a little bit more. Were y'all able to get any of the footage from the water cannons out to Facebook, or how did that work?
Well, eventually we did a sweep, and we found vacant tents that had devices in them that were trying to suppress our cell service. And we found some other saboteur type things that were going on, such as in the middle of the night cutting our solar panel capabilities in the middle of the night. That sort of thing kept happening over and over again. So when we were able to counter that and bring that to an end, we were able to get more live feeds out. And one of the biggest turning points and biggest events that I think motivated a lot of the veterans to come out was the late night, 20-degree weather, freezing cold, and we would do prayer marches. It wasn't a non-aggressive, just a prayer session.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Ever notice your dog slowing down and having health issues and wonder, what can I do to make them better? Well, my friend, add rough greens to your dog's food for 90 days and I guarantee you'll see changes that will amaze you. Greetings. Naturopathy Dr. Dennis Black, inventor of Rough Greens here, and I invite you to give your pup the Rough Greens 90-day challenge. In the first 30 days, you'll see shinier coats and increased energy. By day 60, your dog will have a stronger immune system, less shedding, improved joint function, all due to the live nutrients that you've added to their diet. And at 90 days, better digestion, reduced inflammation, improved heart health, and you may even have reduced their cancer risk. Fetch your dog a free Jumpstart trial bag today. Go to roughgreens.com. Use promo code 90day. That's ruffgreens.com. Use promo code 90day. You just cover the shipping. You don't have to change your dog's food to improve your dog's health. Just add a scoop of Rough Greens.
The shaman with the incense and that sort of thing, and we would go and do prayers. And then when the sun would go down, and we'd do prayers when the sun would come up. We would do prayers to the water. These are all rituals. These are all Native American rituals that it's really a religious event that's within their religious beliefs to do these things. And we would go bless even the soldiers that were there, which were, sheriff deputies coming in from other states. There were a lot of sheriff deputies that had quit their jobs because they didn't want to be there because they were just astonished by what they were being forced to do. So during one of these, late at night, at the end of the night, apparently they surprised us with a water cannon and with some very hardcore riot gear. And I don't know, maybe it was the group, what town they may have come from, because they were coming from Montana, Idaho, they were coming from Iowa, they were coming from Wisconsin, they were coming from everywhere and trading out shifts out there. So this particular group was extremely militant. And they decided to start spraying in the middle of the prayer with water cannon. And that really upset people because it was elders in the front doing the prayers. And when we're talking elders, you're talking in their 70s and up. And you're talking about women, you're talking about, elder men, you're talking about vets, that sort of thing. It upset everybody. And everybody got really aggressive back verbally. And nobody crossed any lines. Nobody jumped any fences or walls. It wasn't like in D.C. Nobody's breaking windows or anything like that. Everybody's just yelling and shouting at them, to stop it. And at that point, the cannons turned off, and then they started just pepper macing everybody and spraying everybody with bear mace. At that point, as people were trying to scatter and disperse from the mace, a couple of gentlemen with non-lethal shotguns started shooting the crowd with beanbags and rubber bullets. They were aiming straight at people's faces rather than their bodies. And so a girl got hit straight in the face and it took out her eye right in front of everybody. Then another girl, as everybody got more and more upset at this and started yelling, they opened the cannon back up. They started spraying everybody. And then they just started to throw percussion grenades. They hit another girl on the other side with one of these grenades, and it was so powerful, the blast, and she was so little and frail that it blew her arm off and split her arm open. They tried to say that she was holding a propane canister and was intending to throw it at them. But we, thanks to Facebook Live, were live in front of the whole entire country, and there were over 300,000 people watching that live feed when it was happening. So when the Morton County Sheriff tried to claim this, they were shut down real quick on this, real quick. And still to this day, nothing's been done. There's been no investigation, no federal investigation, nothing. Nobody has gone to look and see, who did this and why.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you're telling the story, and it's so amazing because you are painting this picture, and I think a lot of people don't realize the depth of what was going on, because I know that you had pneumonia, right? And so did many people.
At the end, right?
At the end, right?
Yeah.
Because you're standing there in freezing cold temperatures, in below zero,
right?
With freezing cold water, and standing there, and I know that you were sick for quite some time.
Yeah, I ended up in the hospital.
Because of it, right? And so tell me, okay, so you're dealing with these insane conditions. You're dealing with these flying over you left and right. Everything's happening. People are trying to keep the faith. I mean, was there a point when y'all said, oh, maybe this has worked? Because I remember there was something that happened at one point in time. What was that when you finally got some sort of, hey, maybe we're on the other side of this?
Yes. Basically what had happened is the Corps of Engineers finally surfaced with a response. Everybody had been on pins and needles waiting for a response from the Corps of Engineers because they had the ultimate control and say on this whole project. They're the ones who make the permits. They came forward and said that they would not issue the final permit, and which was what all this was, down to. It was a final battle of them with this pipeline going under this lake. And when that happened, it was a victory for everybody. It was our first real victory and sign that we had a chance. We had a chance to stop this. We had a chance to turn this around. We had a chance to achieve what the town just 50 miles north had achieved. They were the original recipients of this pipeline. They stood up against the pipeline because they didn't want an oil spill to affect their town. So that's why it got rerouted to the Indian Reservation.
So for a split second, there was some sort of positive thing.
Right.
Now, what happened since then? Since that letter from the Corps of Engineers, what's happened since then?
Since then, it started to kind of spiral down a little bit. The veterans came in and had a huge impact. When the veterans came in, I think it scared the state because it was originally, it was supposed to be 2,000 veterans via Facebook. That's what they had posted. It turned out to be over 5,000 veterans that showed up. They showed up because they saw this video of the water cannons and everything that was happening to the people and what they were doing and the face shots that were the sheriff was doing to people. And that's not the country they defend. They didn't defend a country that does this to their own citizens, especially in a peaceful citizens that were not destroying people's property. They weren't destroying a Starbucks in downtown D.C. They were praying. So they really upset the veterans. When the veterans came in, it was interesting. The sheriff department disappeared. The entire security company ended up disappearing into the hills, and there was nobody there anymore on the front lines. And there was this little bridge there covering a little stretch of water, and that's where their stronghold was. Well, they retreated. And then they immediately said that they were no longer going to secure that area, that it was up to the federal government, and they were done securing the area, and the federal government needed to step in and handle it further, right when the veterans showed up. So with the Corps of Engineers announcement, it seemed like the momentum of stopping the pipeline was happening, and everybody relaxed. Many people relaxed. We also, the advantage of it being the Christmas holiday, which that's why so many people were able to show up, along with prior to that, the Thanksgiving holiday, and so many students were able to show up during the Thanksgiving holiday. And that winding down, the numbers dropped, and the tribe thought that it was coming to an end. And prematurely, part of the tribe, which is not recognized by more the purest of the tribe, which is the tribal council, declared it to be a success and for everybody to go home. And many people did. Many people.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Ever notice your dog slowing down and having health issues and wonder, what can I do to make them better? Well, my friend, add rough greens to your dog's food for 90 days and I guarantee you'll see changes that will amaze you. Greetings. Naturopathy Dr. Dennis Black, inventor of Rough Greens here, and I invite you to give your pup the Rough Greens 90-day challenge. In the first 30 days, you'll see shinier coats and increased energy. By day 60, your dog will have a stronger immune system, less shedding, improved joint function, all due to the live nutrients that you've added to their diet. And at 90 days, better digestion, reduced inflammation, improved heart health, and you may even have reduced their cancer risk. Fetch your dog a free Jumpstart trial bag today. Go to roughgreens.com. Use promo code 90day. That's ruffgreens.com. Use promo code 90day. You just cover the shipping. You don't have to change your dog's food to improve your dog's health. Just add a scoop of Rough Greens.
People did go home, and many people did leave, but it wasn't done. It wasn't over. There was much more to be done, and that showed its ugly head real quick.
So you have a scene here where there's been some positive movement, and we're seeing the retreats by some of these folks, and you have some of the military, some of the vets out there trying to help and all that good stuff. And so half the people are leaving thinking this is a success. But what was really going on? Because I know that there was really all this other stuff stirring up. It was like you call it what the calm before the storm was what was about to happen, right?
Correct.
Okay, so paint that picture. So there we are. Everything seems okay. People are going home. Now what happens?
Now what happens, which astonished me, Kelsey Warren comes out on CBS and basically gives a challenge to the protesters. And really, we don't refer to ourselves as protesters in this sense. We like to consider ourselves as protectors, water protectors. We're protecting the water. We're protecting everybody's right to water. We're not really protesting anything. We're just protecting the water. But he was interviewed with CBS, and he basically said that this was going to happen no matter what, and everybody was naive. And yes, pipelines break, but he knew 100% as soon as Trump was in office that he would get his permits and he would finish this job, and everybody just needed to go home. And he was not going to abide by the Corps of Engineers telling him to stop and cease any more of the drilling and the hold until they do an environmental assessment.
Wow. Okay, so he goes on national TV and says this. How did that make you feel watching that?
That fired me up. That really fired me up. That really shocked me for him to have the audacity to say that and to challenge the federal government.
And also you have to think about the other people with the backings here, with the banks and stuff. Now those folks are quiet, right?
Oh, very quiet. Yeah. There's other investors behind them that are they're smart. They're not saying a word. They're staying out of it.
They just don't want anybody to even know they're around. They don't even know. They don't want them to even think they have any money involved in this. I think that's interesting. So you got Kelsey, what's his last name?
Warren.
Kelsey Warren. And he's based in Dallas, right?
Yeah, he's probably, you know him in regards to Clyde Warren Park in downtown Dallas, which is named after his son, Clyde.
Oh, okay. So right here in Texas proud here, right?
Oh, yeah.
So what did you do immediately? I mean, what did you do? Did you call on your folks and say, hey, we gotta get back out there in droves. We got to figure out what was your next plan of action? That's
exactly right. I immediately started working on helping people recognize that this isn't over. We have a lot more to go. This may be a 4-year battle. This may go on until after Trump is out of office, if he's out of office in 4 years. So we have a long struggle, and to be prepared for that, and not to think that this is going to be a short, simple struggle with a lot of drama and some issues happen, and then the tide's just going to turn and we'll have a victory. This runs so deep, it goes beyond just Standing Rock, and that's why so many people from Europe and around the world have showed up, because this has been a global problem. This is a problem, and the same battle's going on with indigenous people in Africa. The same battle has been going on with indigenous people in South America and Ecuador. Ecuador recently, though, their tribes just won a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit against Shell and Chevron over the same problem.
Wow. Okay. And that's where I want to go when we return. Lou and I are going to be talking about the global issue, because this is way more than just Standing Rock. It really is. And I think when we kind of begin to understand the situation and circumstance, and that's why we're doing this show, and we're going to do several shows, because you need to know the true perspective of what's really happening, because you should be educated and understand what's happening so that you can decide what you need to do. Stay tuned. We'll be right back and live your true life perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess. Be back this time. We're back this time in 2 shakes.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Tonight, Lou Rocha's joining me live here on Perspectives, and we've been talking about Standing Rock, the pipeline, the environment, the oil situation, what that means to people, what that means to all of us, what that means to the Native Americans, but what that means to us, what that means to our environment. But let's go a step further, Lou. Let's go a step further. You know, oftentimes we see this as a confined situation, as something that's just individual. It's not a big deal. It doesn't really have any sort of global situation, but that is just the opposite of what's really happening, because this is just a symptom of a global situation. So let's begin talking about that globally. We have the Standing Rock situation, but we got issues all over our country and all over the world.
Right. Many of the land rights for indigenous people and civilians of many governments are in jeopardy right now and being challenged by these major corporations that are a part of this huge global movement, financial movement that's been going on between all the countries, between China, between Russia, between the U.S. and the EU. And there's a huge competition going on. They're all competing they want to be in the first position with the biggest markets that are coming up. And the biggest hot markets are India and China. India, which has a middle class that surpasses the entire population of the United States. China, which has a middle class on the rise. These guys need to drive from point A to point B. They're going to have their own cars. They need gas to get from point A to point B. The markets are insane. North Dakota is capped out right now. They have tons of oil, but they can only produce so much so fast, and they can only ship it so fast. If they open these pipelines, they can double their capacity. Let's just as an example, if right now they're at about 350 million gallons or a year, let's just say, with the pipelines open, boom, they double their capacity. To kind of put that in perspective, though, just kind of let you know how big Texas is. Texas is almost triple that in volume and its capacities. So, but that's still no joke up there in North Dakota. But when you go into other countries where it's even cheaper to do this, where it's even, you go into these backwoods of some small Ecuadorian jungle or into Africa, where who cares who owns that? Who cares who the rancher is? You just go to the local politician and they grant you the access, and you go do what you want to do. EPA laws are out the window. Nobody is regulating anything. Nobody is watching anything, and nobody is regulating you or paying attention to what you're doing. They're just taking in the tax dollars you're bringing to their community and their government.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Ever notice your dog slowing down and having health issues and wonder, what can I do to make them better? Well, my friend, add rough greens to your dog's food for 90 days and I guarantee you'll see changes that will amaze you. Greetings. Naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black, inventor of Rough Greens here, and I invite you to give your pup the Rough Greens 90-Day Challenge. In the first 30 days, you'll see shinier coats and increased energy. By day 60, your dog will have a stronger immune system, less shedding, improved joint function, all due to the live nutrients that you've added to their diet. And at 90 days, better digestion, reduced inflammation, improved heart health, and you may even have reduced their cancer risk. Fetch your dog a free Jumpstart trial bag today. Go to roughgreens.com. Use promo code 90day. That's ruffgreens.com. Use promo code 90day. You just cover the shipping. You don't have to change your dog's food to improve your dog's health. Just add a scoop of Rough Greens.
And whatever payoffs, if any at all, is coming to those government officials. But in the meantime, they are stepping all over indigenous rights and sacred grounds that have belonged to a tribe sometimes where they've been for thousands of years. When you're going into Africa, you're going into some tribes that have been there for 25,000 to sometimes 30,000 years of history. When you go into South America, you're coming across tribes that, their history goes back almost 14,000 years, which is debatable, between 7 and 14,000 years. And then some places in Indonesia, the same thing. But they're tribal lands. They can't afford to fight. They can't afford the attorneys. So they're able to just get stepped all over. It's like free money coming out of there for these guys. If you have the ability, if you can afford to bring the equipment, do the drilling, and make it happen and pay off the right people, you're going to make a killing, and so are they. You're going to make hundreds of millions of dollars.
So they can just step all over them. I actually had a friend of mine that had a property in Ecuador, and this is a long time ago, several years ago, but basically somebody paid off some governmental official, and they had that property since their great-grandfather, and it was taken from them. and they don't have any rights to it, and they've been fighting this for years.
Right.
And that's not even about oil rights. That's not about mineral rights. That's just a small property that his great grandfather had. I mean, and so if that can happen to somebody, it's not even about mineral rights. It's not even about oil. I mean, they can take that when it comes to big money, right? They can just roll right over these people.
Correct.
Bam, they pay off these politicians. They pay off these folks. They pay off the law enforcement, and then they just roll in.
Correct. Or they have laws passed that enable them to do what they need to do to make it happen. And that's also what they've learned these techniques. Well, now we have a new problem. We have a big competitor, the Middle East, our biggest competitor in this market. And I don't think want to go back to where we were, where the Middle East dominated us on the oil market. So there is this mad rush to position ourselves so that doesn't happen again. Rather than progressing to green energy, we instead are on a mad rush to invest into our infrastructure to instead be competitive or dominate the fossil fuel industry. And that's where their money's going instead of green. So, and only because they want to make all this money off of India and China. Mexico being a huge competitor in this because everything here is privately owned for the most part. Everything in Canada is privately owned. But in Mexico, years ago in the 70s, when we first started having these crises and the energy crisis under Carter, they kicked out all the oil companies. They got tired of it. They got tired of the oil companies disrespecting the locals and the tribes and having all the problems that were coming from these corporations steamrolling, paying off politicians, and Mexico couldn't control the oil companies. So they kicked them out. They got rid of them and they took it over. So all the oil, all the gas stations, all belong to the government of Mexico. That's been a huge tax base for them and a huge source of revenue for that country to prop it up. Mexico now is in a point where they are at the best they've ever been economically since 200 years ago, since around the time that our government and our country first started to really come into being a player in the global scene. Mexico has its largest middle class it's ever had. There is a slow reversal of people instead not coming to the U.S. and instead going back to Mexico. It's a slow trickle. It's not a mass flow like some people have proclaimed, but there are more and more of the Mexican citizens not coming. The largest flow is coming from the Central American countries and South America also, northern part of South America, because their economics are still really bad. But because of this, Mexico is a major competitor to our privately owned oil barons here. Major competitor. It can compete with us in the Asian market, with India, with China. So what better to stifle your number one competitor by doing things to affect their economy?
That's true. It's interesting that you talk about that because you're right. I guess when you look back at history, back in the Carter years, things have changed amazingly since then for Mexico. And you're right. A lot of folks that come here to the United States and they make their money and they send it back, and it is getting a bigger middle class. So what are they wanting to do? I mean, do you think there's any implication with building a wall? Do you feel, what do you think they want to do next with the Mexican economy?
I definitely say that slowing down their economy and stifling their growth helps us on our overall goal to get all these pipelines built, this new infrastructure for oil and fossil fuels, and get into that Asian and Indian market in Southern Asia and dominate it and supersede the Middle East. And they all know it, and nothing better happened to these barons, these big oil barons, or a lot of these big investors than the recession. When the recession hit, it hurt the common man, but it opened up a buying spree for them to go in and buy up everything they could. So when the market slowly came back, They not only got back all their money they lost, they came back 10 times stronger, 10 times more powerful, and they now had us cornered, and it was like a chess game. You had to bring back the economy. You had to bring back income to everybody here in the United States. You had to give them money to pay their mortgage, pay their rent, buy food for their family. But at the same time, you had to allow this to happen and unfold right before your eyes in order for it to happen. And that's what they did. And now we're checkmate. We have a situation where we have this very powerful power base that is in control of a lot of the decisions that our politicians have to make because they bought up the farm during the recession.
Wow. Now we're in, I find us in kind of in a pickle. I find us in a situation because I'm an environmentalist. I believe in green energy. And I know, I guess this oil is not going to us. So it's just going to other countries. So that's basically, we're just outsourcing and just making money on our exports, which will be oil is like our biggest export, right? Is that what we're trying to do? Which is the funniest thing. And I remember Ross Perot, another Dallas billionaire, warning us of the type of math that our government would do and that some of these private entities would do, where they would recount the same steps over and over again and add that up as a whole. And what I'm talking about, when they proclaim that a pipeline's going to bring 28,000 jobs, what that really is sometimes the same jobs counted over and over again. When they say construction jobs, you're talking about a crew of about 300 or 400. And then that 300 or 400 every 30 feet to every mile is recounted over again. And by the time you get 1,000 miles, if you recount the same people over and over again, it is as if there were 20,000 jobs worked by the same 300 people. And they recount them. And so when they claim all these jobs that it's bringing, it's not. And what it is going to do is bring in a huge amount of revenue and a huge amount of tax source for politicians, their buddies, and some of our billionaires. Also, it's interesting, too, you and I talked about this off air earlier about it's not a Democrat or a Republican thing. This is a political thing. Before, when you look at Obama, Obama was involved in this, too, because he needed to make his numbers look better, right? I mean, because of our economic problems. So it's not a political thing. It's across the board. Oh, across the board. Because he wanted to make the numbers look better, too. But this would have happened no matter who got into office. This was going to happen no matter what. Right. The only difference is the smoking mirror that's used by each group is a little different. That's the only difference. The way they will define the same word in a different way. That's all it is. But they're doing the same thing and they're achieving the same goal, both the Democrats and the Republicans. It's interesting. I mean, you would think, and I have problems with this at night when I try to go to sleep and I think about life. And I think a lot of people listening to this show, I mean, yes, you need money to survive, and that's where we are in this world. But at the same time, we really wish people would do things for the goodness and the right thing and what's right and just right and reasonable. But that just doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't. The sad thing is the behavior that was happening globally over the last 20 years outside the continental United States has made it to the continental United States. So we talk about our greatest fear being terrorist attacks from the Middle East. But what we're missing while we're watching that and focused on that, we're missing is the invasion of an ideology that has been executed and perfected outside the continental United States and is now being executed on our own citizens. We're missing this completely because we got this wall, we got the Middle East, we're looking in all these other directions and we're not looking inland to our heartland. And so we have now in West Texas ranchers, farmers, those who have probably lived in their house and inherited it from grandfather to grandson for many generations since they first settled there, losing their homes and losing their land by an illegal use of eminent domain.
This eminent domain is being used to take their land, to take their homes, so they can build a gas line that's going to run through Mexico for it to be exported to China. None of it's going to the United States. None of it is bringing jobs to the United States. None of it is bringing any income to the United States. Yet, they're using eminent domain to take their homes and their ranches. This all started to first surface during the Bundy. When we first saw the Bundy Ranch problems that went on in the Bundy standoff in Oregon, that began long before the media caught on. And so we caught the tail end, and all we saw was what looked like militia rebels that just didn't want to behave and wanted to just fight the government. And they were Timothy McVeigh types, these sovereign citizen types. And they were demonized as such. But what we missed is what happened in the beginning, and the media wasn't there. What was happening was for mineral rights and needs of senators who had these offshore deals with these big mining companies are trying to grab lands and expand federal owned lands for future mineral right uses for these different contracts that they want to score. And the Bundys ranch backed up to some federal land, and they wanted to take and push back the Bundys because they were on a ripe source of minerals. The BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, immediately was being the puppet for many others behind them that you'll never see in the darkness, the big, huge billionaires pushing this, and the senators that are working with them to make this happen, to grab the land. They went and shot all their cattle. They went and took their cattle. They went and used eminent domain to take the land. The Bundys went out to try to even work their land and got arrested for being on their own land. It just kept unfolding. And then when the locals and the other ranchers came to defend the Bundys, they threw a 70-year-old woman, mother of 11 kids, on the ground. And that's where the hotbed started. And when they threw her on the ground, they surrounded the BLM, ran them off the land, and then here comes everybody else in the federal government to come back for payback. And it grew to the point where you had 300 people from that area of ranchers and farmers versus 100 sheriff and FBI, and that's on a standoff in the middle of the desert. They backed down, the federal government backed down, but they used many of the same tactics that were used in Standing Rock. But we didn't see this coming. We didn't realize that there's a blueprint yet for this. The Bundys were so empowered by their victory, they go to Oregon to help the Hammonds that were caught in the same situation. They had their heart was with seeing another rancher be in the same situation with the BLM. They went too far this time. They got too cocky. They went beyond the peaceful way of doing things, and everything went wrong. And that's why most of us, that's where we tuned in. That's where the media tuned in. And all we saw was the Oregon issue and what looked like a temper tantrum. We didn't really notice what was happening. Well, now in Standing Rock, you have the exact same blueprint. Everything that was happening there, it happened in Standing Rock. So it wasn't just them attacking Native Americans. It didn't matter who was in their path, whether you're Native American or a U.S. citizen. And they used that same blueprint all the way through Iowa, through Missouri, and all the farmers and ranchers along the rest of this pipeline were just steamrolled with this eminent domain abuse that's being used now by our government. Now it's made it to Texas. Now in West Texas, it has reared its ugly head, and it is doing the same thing through West Texas. They are. Now that the XL is going to open, you're going to see the same thing happen through the rest of the way, which is Oklahoma and East Texas. All the ranchers and homeowners that are in the way, eminent domain, and you're out. Get out of the way. They're first going to come and offer you an offensive amount for your property. They're going to offer you a second amount, still offensive, and not even the value of your property. Then on the second turn down, they're going to hit you with a third and take you to court and take it away from you in court for nothing. And that's what they're doing. They're taking all this land for nothing.
So they're offering once, twice, 3 times. You say no, then they're just going to take it.
Right. And before you have a chance to even change your mind, you're already in court, and they've already steamrolled you in court, and you're done. And that's what's happened. So this eminent domain, these people aren't even getting paid. They're actually losing their land for $0. And so the oil guys and that natural gas guys are getting this land for free. Much better deal than having to put a lease or oil lease or a mineral rights lease and pay the people. Just take it for free and steamroll right through their property and don't have to pay anybody.
Oh, my God. When we return, we'll be talking more about what's going on. Lou's going to tell us a little bit more about what's there on our future, and we'll be talking about some talking points for next week's show because we think that it's time for you to know what's truly going on. Stay tuned because Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess. We'll be back this time. We'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
You could be my luck. Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Tonight, Lou Rocha is joining me, his friend, a Native American, and also one of the folks that was in the front lines of Standing Rock. And we've been talking more about the implication of Standing Rock and what was going on back a few years ago that we didn't even understand what was going on. And what ranch was that you were talking about earlier?
The Bundy Ranch.
The Bundy Ranch. Give a little bit more background on the Bundy Ranch. When did all that occur?
That occurred around this time last year, actually, a little over 2 years ago and up to last year. And that was in Nevada originally. But when the media came in and got involved and the public became aware, was in Oregon with a standoff where they had occupied a federal building on federal land. And it was actually a Bureau of Land Management steel building out in the middle of nothing, just flat land and cactus and sage. And they occupied it while they were gone on holiday. And they went there to go defend and show their solidarity to a family of ranchers in Oregon who were going through the same hard times that the Bundys had gone through in Nevada. Little did we realize that this was a repeated blueprint that was starting to unfold throughout the entire continental United States right before us.
And it was going to begin to affect eventually West Texas.
Correct. It has made it to West Texas.
You know, so that's the thing is that we were talking about right before break about how they're basically steamrolling over people. So these big oil guys and all these folks are literally offering money to these people to get their land, and it's some absurd small amount of money. And it's their whole entire livelihood. It's what they've always known. I'm sure most of the land came from their great-great-grandparents and that kind of sort of thing that have had the land. And so basically they can just take it from them.
Correct.
And are we doing anything to stop that in our government right now, or no?
Nothing. They've been unstoppable. We can't win in court. There's just it just keeps unfolding and keeps unfolding. It's like just a snowball. And there was a time where this just didn't happen, where these companies instead would just go and get an oil lease. They'd convince the people it's in their interest and everybody's interest and the nation's interest to do the lease, and people would do the oil lease. And sometimes these mineral rights would be a 100-year lease with some of these companies, and that's how they did it. And people got to keep their land, and some people would allow a pipe, to go through above or under the ground, whichever. And a new a new system emerged, and pretty vicious.
It's interesting to me because, where does that stop? When you begin to start taking things basically with force, and there is no laws to protect people anymore, where does it end? Is there any end in sight, or is this just going to happen all over our country?
If it can happen in Texas, it can happen anywhere in the country, because Texas used to be really proud that it had the strictest and toughest property laws, that it protected people's rights and homeowner rights and property rights stronger than any state in the United States. And those laws are as old as the Spanish, when the Spanish were here. And that rolled into Mexico, it rolled into the Republic of Texas, and they rolled into when we became a part of the Union, that the United States recognized our power over those domains. And for it now to be able to happen here is alarming, because this is probably the most protected place you could live when it comes to your property rights in the United States.
So what are they doing? I mean, did they find like basically a loophole in the system? Is that what's happening? And we can't find a way to patch that, to change the law, or what? Or is it just because
Correct.
the lawmakers are behind the money and so therefore they don't want to do anything? And so basically we are just we don't, I mean, if you have land and you happen to be in the area where there is going to be oil or minerals, then you might lose your land.
All of the above. It's exactly, you just nailed it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you do about that?
Hope to God that you get the right congressman in line and behind you, and the right judges, and start to turn that momentum. And that's where we're at. That's where the fight is. And little things like the Corps of Engineers standing up against the federal government and saying slow down, and little victories like that is where it begins to turn. And that's all it takes, is little victories, and putting the right politician and not the, politician that's corrupt. And it's not that they're really corrupt. It's, we opened a door with Citizens United that has allowed a situation to happen, and we put our politicians in this situation with Citizens United, regardless of whether they're liberal, Democrat, Republican, whatever, or independent, that these corporations can really put some juice on them. And until that ever overturns or gets rewritten in some way that really works, it's just like the arguments of our Obamacare and that sort of thing. It doesn't work right. If it is a good idea, it needs to be rewritten, and it has opened the doorway for these things, and that's why these things are happening.
I agree with you. I find it interesting. It's not a liberal. It's not a conservative issue. It's not a Democrat. It's not a Republican issue. There are some decent people out there in the political stream of things, but honestly, I mean, for the most part, it comes down to the money, and it comes down to the power, and you have to find the people that can actually deal with the power and not be corrupted by the power, not be corrupted by the money. This has been going on for decades upon decades. I mean, this has been going on under the Obama administration, prior to that administration, Bush administration, back. It's a no-brainer, but it's interesting how we like to cover that up and use whoever's in office and find the problem there when we're not actually finding the problem with the beginning and the source of where this is coming from. And I find that that's the thing that you don't see on CBS and CNN and NBC and all that crap. You're not seeing what's really going on, because the people that really control this government and this world are the people that are quietly protected, and nobody even knows who they are. And I think it's interesting, like people will talk about the Rothschilds and stuff like that. Right. It's like, well, that's a great place to start maybe, but again, if you've probably heard of them or you know them, it's probably not really them.
Right.
I think that really, honestly, people don't realize how powerful you can be when you have personally in your own family trillions and trillions of dollars.
Right.
You're above the law. There is no law.
And when you get that big, you're so vested on both sides that whichever way the law goes, you're making money. When you're that big.
You got money on every end.
Just like a recession is good for them. They may lose money, but in the end, they make even more money. So they're so vested in a way where they're not going to lose no matter what happens. So that's you're beating a dead horse on them. Our first example of this was Standard Oil and the Rockefellers, and we went through this already with the Rockefellers and Standard Oil, and when we broke them up, and that was when we first started having legislation to stop this kind of thing. Now we're gone full circle. We're right back where we were when we were being controlled by Standard Oil and the Rockefellers. We're just right back to it. Only this time, it's not one individual, so you can't go, it's a monopoly. It's just multiple. It's an attitude that goes parallel, just right there with a whole lot of other billionaires that are following the same blueprint.
History does repeat itself, doesn't it?
In a sense, yep.
It's always very interesting to me. And I think for a lot of folks out there listening to the show, you're authentic and you're trying to live a true life, and you believe in the common good. But some of this stuff can be very overwhelming to you because it seems very bleak and it seems very sad and it seems detrimental to our society and to the world society. And I would have to agree with that. So let's talk about what are some of the things that you and I will be talking about next week, because this is a continuing saga. This isn't going to stop. And tomorrow we're not going to tell you that, unicorns and rainbows are here and everything's great and gummy bears for all. And, everybody gets a glazed donut for free and a Slurpee of their choice. Yeah, no, right. Unfortunately, that's just not the way it is right now, right?
Right.
But we can find something within ourselves, or we can be active participants in things where we're not just watching things happen. You don't have to watch this like watching the Kardashians on TV. Instead, you can actually have something to say, but better yet, you can actually share this show and our upcoming shows with everybody that you love so that they begin to understand what the truth really is.
Right.
So where are we going to begin next week? Because I think, this is obviously an ongoing saga. So here we are in the situation. What's coming up? What do you see up on the horizon here that's coming around?
Well, now this is starting to cross the path and hurt the money of other big billionaires in their industries. And it's becoming a problem. And now you got billionaires going after billionaires. And that's a new situation that has arisen in the last month, something brand new. You got the big shipping guys that are going to be affected by this. You got the railway guys. You got the J.B. Hunts of transportation being affected by this. You got mostly Warren Buffett, who has most of the shipping going on of the petroleum coming out of North Dakota and the trains coming out of North Dakota transporting this petroleum being affected by this. So now you're affecting his money. So that's going to be interesting. They're going to start clashing and see how that plays out. You have the politic end of it, as where does the politics start to change? What legislation starts to happen? What new legislation is budding right now that will come hopefully to fruition that will start to turn this in another direction. When it comes to the politics, you got the warnings that came from this from Eisenhower and from Reagan. Reagan warned us about this and said, "What's the purpose and the value of having any property rights if the government at any time can take your property rights or your personal rights, and for any reason at any time, if the government wanted to, can drum up any charge and hold you accountable to those charges in order to get what they want and do what they want." These are Reagan's very words. And here we are. That exact thing is happening. Then we also have what's happening also now outside the continental United States due to what's happening inside the continental United States, where people are becoming political prisoners and disappearing, almost a mirror image of the world of cartels. Or if you look back to the diamond trade industry in South Africa and what was happening there, you're getting that happening now with big oil and some of the big oil that is involved with our own oil companies in the United States. We have people disappearing in Mexico, not because of a cartel, not because of a political ideology, but because they've opposed a billionaire project coming out of Texas.
Wow. Yeah, this is it, guys. This is the cliffhanger. We'll be back next week to talk about these things, to basically educate and to put these things in your mind so you really understand what's really truly happening. Lou, you're going to be joining me next week.
Yes, I will.
I look forward to it. And Lou, a last thought for our listeners for tonight.
Just do your research. Don't just go off the articles. Definitely read the article, take the articles, make notes, and then do your own research, because even, what's cited at the bottom could be bad. You just got to keep digging and keep digging and keep digging until keep going until it ends, and it'll reveal itself. The truth will reveal itself. And that's where we're at now. We have to do our own research now as a society. We have to take definitely the media as our source of, hey, by the way, this is happening. But when it comes to the full facts, we have to get out there and get them ourselves now, because you're not going to get them all. You're going to get some most of the time.
I agree with you, and the thing is that that's totally true what Lou just said. And look at who you're getting your information from. Really watch. One of the best ways to get information sometimes is to go outside of the country that you're in and really look at stuff like that's coming out of different countries. As well as getting different sources and not defining yourself by a liberal or by a Democrat, by a Republican, by an independent, and really looking at a source that's outside of that. As well as your gut and understanding that you have to understand what reality is and begin to understand there is other things at work. Sometimes we want to agree with it. Sometimes we want to disagree with it. Sometimes it makes us sad. Sometimes it makes us aware. But all in all, it's about being truthful to yourself and understanding where you stand. I look forward to next week's show.
Thank you. I do too. Thanks for having me.
Hey, you're welcome. Lou will join me next week, and I look forward to talking more about this. And we're going to see just how deep the rabbit hole goes. So stay tuned, because Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, be back this time. You know it. I'm back this time in 3 shakes.